Kevin, it's all yours.
All right. It's time to start the show. I'm Kevin. I'm an alcoholic. Welcome everybody to this meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm super grateful to be here. I am full of life and gratitude today. And that is solely because of Alcoholics Anonymous sponsorship, the 12 steps in this fellowship, and service. I have no idea what I'm going to say today. I've been nervous all day. I get like sick to my stomach before I share, and I don't know why, because I've had the distinct privilege of doing this a lot. I'm 43 years old, and I live my life on crutches. I'm very hesitant to say disabled because I don't feel that way. But government lingo, I am. On paperwork, I'm disabled, and but I don't feel that way. So I don't know. I'll just say that I am. But so yeah, I've drank myself into these crutches, and I'll tell you that now. I usually forget to mention it. So in the beginning of these long talks, I'll say it now so you can see the demonstration that this God of my understanding has done in my life. Because it is truly, and this isn't ego talking, a remarkable thing that's happened. It really is. Because if left to my own devices, absolutely for sure, without this program, if I'm not in jail, I'm for sure dead. Because that's the way I drank. I drank without a governor. I drank without devil may. I drank with a devil may care attitude, man. This is not going to be a linear story. That's not how I work. It's not how my brain works. It jumps around, but usually what happens is that I try to put a little recovery in with the funny parts and the bad parts and the sad parts. So real quick, God help me set aside everything I think I know about myself. The 12 steps, this meeting, my disease, the people in this meeting, the big book, you, God, so that somebody in here can have a new experience and get some hope. And we can all leave here with a deeper understanding of you, God. Amen. Yeah, so my home group is the Bronx Big Book Study, and it's a beautiful, beautiful meeting. It's one of my most favorite home groups I've ever had. I have two home groups. I have one here in Baltimore, and that is my favorite home group. It's a tiny little meeting. It's got about 20 people in it, and and my sobriety date is April 1st, 2016, and I am by far the youngest person in sobriety in that room, and I love it. When we meet in person, there's this back row, and I call them Civil War veterans, and because they have fought that fight. They have fought that fight inside of them, and there's a row of them, and between 6 of them, I guarantee you, there's 400 years of sobriety in there. Like I swear, like each of them has between 40 and almost 60 years. Like somewhere in there, it's between 40 and one. I think the most person has like 53 years, and that's my home group because they're still doing service. They are the example of what I want, and because even here, they still come every day. They still meet every day, and they would still. I come from this little pocket of AA where they would rather step on your feelings than walk on your grave. And they showed me what real love was. And I get emotional when I talk about this because I am a truly grateful alcoholic today. Like, because the path that was led for me to get here was I stepped on a lot of people and I hurt a lot of people. And I didn't even, and the the amazing thing is that I didn't see it. And it wasn't like I hurt him physically, because I'm not that guy. I really hurt him emotionally. I stepped on a lot of toes, and I broke a lot of hearts. And I was so close to getting ostracized from my family, and I thought I was really smart. I heard ostracized one time, and I thought it was an Italian word for an ostrich. But like, you know, I I am not smart at all. I was talking to my friend earlier, and she has this great quote, and she's got these master's degrees, and she was a nun, and she's like a teacher 15 times, and she's got 3 doctorates, and she says, I am educated far beyond, no, I am, what is it? I'm educated far beyond my intelligence. And I feel like that sometimes, because of you. Like you've shown me so much about my soul, you know. When my soul cracks open because of you guys and because you show me this path to God, something happens. I come from a long line of bootleggers and moonshiners from the mountains of Virginia. And my family's from this little place called Carroll County. And my other family's from Roanoke. And so my mom's side of the family's from the mountains, and my dad's side of the family, they're from Roanoke. And how my dad convinced my mother to make me as a mystery to me, because my dad is a criminal. He was a criminal. He stole everything. He was a drug dealer. And my mom is this beautiful, beautiful woman who's super, super smart, who just loves alcoholics. Like she's got Al-Anon all running through her. And I'm a lot like my mom, except I'm a lot like my dad too. Like definitely a double winner. And I love alcoholics, and I love alcohol. Where's he at? Alcohol. I love him when he says that. And that's one of the reasons I come to this meeting, just so I can see him so I can hear him read the blue card. And before I get going, if there's anybody new in here, in Baltimore, we have this thing where we read something from the big book. That way, if you don't hear anything from me, at least you heard something true. Right. So page 132, it's in the family afterward. And it's one of my absolute favorite readings in the book. And it says, we have been speaking to you of some serious, sometimes tragic things. We have been dealing with alcohol in its worst aspect, but we are not a glum lot. If newcomers could see no joy or fun in our existence, they wouldn't want it. We absolutely insist on enjoying life. We try not to indulge in the cynicism over the state of the nations, nor do we carry the world's troubles on our shoulders. Excuse me. When we see a man sinking into the mire that is alcoholism, we give him first aid and place what we have at his disposal. For his sake, we do recount and almost relive the horrors of our past. But those of us who have tried to shoulder the entire burden and trouble of others, we find we are soon overcome of them. So we think cheerfulness and laughter make for usefulness. Outsiders are sometimes shocked when we burst into merriment over the seemingly tragic experiences of our past. But why shouldn't we laugh? We have recovered and have been given the power to help others. This is a place where we laugh at our pain and we cry with our gratitude. I didn't know that at first. It's I'm just truly grateful today. I'm trying to bring you current before I get into it, because I will be a blubbering mess if I tell you my story while I'm emotional. Because something really cool happened yesterday. I've been going. I had this thought about 7 months ago, that my mom was on the phone with my mom, and she said, "Are you ready to come home?" And I live in Baltimore, and they moved back down to the mountains of Virginia. And I said, "Yeah, I'm ready to come home." And I got the call from the apartment yesterday, and they said, "Your apartment will be ready March 27th." And so I'm going home, and my family's excited to have me again. And whoa. So, but all this starts at we'll jump back real quick. I'll run through the story real quick. All this starts at 11 years old. And, well, it really started. I remember the desire that I was going to drink starts at 10. I'm driving a pontoon boat because my real dad is too drunk to drive it. And he looks at me and says, "Have you been laid yet?" And I went, "Huh?" I said, "Dad, I'm 10. And he says, and he just starts giggling. So I set out to prove that I could do it. And I don't know where this drive came from, but for some reason, I wanted to make my dad happy. And at 11 years old, I took my first drink. I stole 2 bottles of liquor from my babysitter. And me and Kenny and Chris got drunk. And that summer, this girl told me she liked me. And then I lost my virginity, and so did she. And then I got arrested. And that's a running theme in my life. At 11 years old, I took my first drink. I lost my virginity and got arrested. And it was the greatest summer of my teenage years. It was a really great summer for Kev. And but it's 5 years later, my stepdad, who's the man I will be calling dad from now on. He got sober when I was 12. So he's 28 years sober, 29, something like that. I'm not doing math right now. But he gets sober 12 years old when I'm 12 years old, and he starts sponsoring men, and he starts bringing men into the house. He starts putting these AA principles in my life. He starts telling me things like he made up his own, right? Like, people say there's no original thoughts in AA. I don't know. My dad's pretty quick. Like he kept saying pop. And I'm like, what? Like, and I think it's and I go to a meeting one day and I hear somebody say it's the noise that your head makes when it comes out of your back end or something. And no, that's not it. Like one day I asked him, and at this point I'm starting to get arrested after I'd been arrested at 11. And he says, "No, your idea of fun's making you a patient or a prisoner. You need to find a new definition of fun." But at 16 years old, he picks me up out of the yard because I'm aspirating my own vomit. I can't even make it home from my neighbor's house, which is it's not even, and we lived a bit in the country, but it wasn't even 500 feet away. And he gives me a bath, and he wakes me up in the morning at 6:30 in the morning or something like that. And he gives me an axe and a bottle of Tylenol and a bottle of water. He tells me to chop wood. And this is how I was raised. Every time he found me drunk or he found me hungover, plans were over for Kevin that day. I was doing yard work. I was doing some kind of work. I was changing an engine. I was doing some kind of physical labor. And let's just say my dad never ran out of firewood or had to cut the grass ever again. And I didn't know what he was doing at that point. He was showing me consequences for my action. He was not calling me a bad person. He did tell me I was sick. And I didn't understand what he was saying when I was doing that, but he was just putting me into action because of my actions. He was giving me a reaction and putting me into action. He was keeping me close to home. He would give me so much work. I'd be so tired I couldn't go out, and I didn't know what he was doing, but I was pissed. And what he soon figured out was the madder he made me, the harder I worked. And I'm one of those people. And but he instilled in me a sense of work ethic, and he instilled in me that this AA principle that I can't blame other people. And I didn't know what that was. I didn't know that was happening. But so yeah, at 16 years old, that happens, and then I went to AA a couple more times when I was 19, and then at 21, somebody looks at me and says, "Hey, do you want to be a bartender?" And I said, "Yeah, of course." And I'm in a resort town. I'm in Solomon's Island, Maryland at this time. And that was the best and maybe worst thing that's ever happened to me. See, I try not to live in those extremes anymore because every decision, good, bad, or indifferent, brought me to you. And that is the best thing that's ever happened to me. Like the best thing that's ever happened to me has brought me to Alcoholics Anonymous. So I try not to say these are bad things, right? Because I've had some pretty horrific things that have happened in my life, but they've all been self-imposed. Like I've never had anything happen to me because of somebody else. Like there's some pretty graphic stories in Alcoholics Anonymous that have happened to people, but none of my stories were because of somebody else. So I don't know if they were bad, right? But mine are pretty dark. You know, I've experienced some things in my story, and I'm about to tell you one that a lot of people have. And so I get this job at 21, and I'm starting to bartend, and then 5 years later, I hit this lumber truck between 50 and 70 miles an hour, and I get put on life support for 13 days, and I break the entire right side of my body. I break my knee. I break my knee, my ankle, my hip, my pelvis. I break my left wrist and my left elbow, and I get put in a wheelchair for a few months. But I'm a quick healer. I've always been an athlete, and that doctor looked at me and said, "You're not going to walk for a year." And I said some graphic language, and I said, "I'll show you." And I walked out of that hospital on a walker 3 months later, and that's just that. You know, we're determined people. You know, I tell you that because when we set our mind to something, we can do it. It's just whether we want to set our mind to it. Like I've set my mind to drink my whole life, and I've done it broke. I've done it with money. But when I do it, this is where my history tells me I go. I end up in a yard, getting a bath from my dad. I end up in a hospital bed, dead for 13 days. And when I woke up, like I'm a Baltimore Orioles fan. When I woke up, the Red Sox were winning the World Series, the first time in 80 years or something like that. Johnny Damon's jumping on home plate. Like that's my first memory of the whole month of October. And I didn't even take into account what my parents had to go through. Like my parents are sitting there listening to that Darth Vader machine, and they're reliving everything that I went through. And my mom looks at me a few years later and she says, "You know, you didn't die for you. You died for me." That's where I drew the line. And I went, "Whoa, way to hit me in the gut, Mom." Like I didn't even take into account her experience. Only because of these 12 steps in this amends process did I actually get to experience what she experienced, some form of it. I can have empathy today. Like me and my mom, we're still best friends today. Like me and her, we've had this amazing relationship my whole life, you know, because we have the same birthday. Like we have this, we're like twins a little bit, except she's my mom. Really, trust me, she's always been my mom. Like she's never been like my friend. Like she was quick to spank my bottom and discipline me, but we have this special relationship. Like we had the best conversation yesterday, you know, and I don't know if this pissed people off, but yeah, we were talking, we could have these really beautiful conversations, and I'll tell you about it later. Hopefully we'll see where God leads this, but you know, God just told me, yeah, don't tell that story. And, but I love the fact that we get to have these deep and meaningful connections again, because I threw it away. I pulled the whole roof down on my whole life. The spiritual structure that was being like this house, I pulled my whole, if I'm the house, if I'm the spiritual house, the temple, I pulled it all down, and I got the gift of it back, and I didn't stop drinking. You know, my dad looks at me in a wheelchair and he says, "Are you done?" "I know where to go." And I said, "The cop put the truck driver at fault." And he just walked away from me pissed. And I got mad at him for leaving. like, how dare you? How dare you leave? And so yeah, I love to drink. I love it. I love it. And then jail starts showing up, because when you give like these are vitamins, but you know what I'm talking about. When you give those to an alcoholic, it's just adding like fuel enhancer to jet fuel. And they've helped me drink more. I've done a bunch of, you know, I've treated all my inside issues with a bunch of outside issues. And And I only do it. I only did all those other outside issues to help me drink more. I love them all, but alcohol is what does it for me. It does it every time. A teacher asked me what I wanted to be, if I could be an animal, if I could be any animal in the world one time. And I told her I'd be yeast. And she said, why? I said, I could eat sugar, pee alcohol. Are you kidding? I said, that's the greatest animal in the world. And like I've always loved it, you know. So like I get out of jail this time and I'm sitting like in jail. My dad looks at me. So my third DUI, I have 3 DUIs. I can't stop drinking. I don't want to stop drinking. I never saw a point to stopping drinking. Like people would look at me and they would just say, you know, you should stop drinking. And I would just look at them and go, why would you do that? Like, that doesn't make sense. Like, I can just not drink for 2 or 3 days. And I couldn't. Like, I could tell them that I could, but I couldn't. I couldn't do it. Like, I didn't understand why you would stop drinking. Like, that's like, for me, it was like eating. Why would you stop eating? Like, I didn't understand why. I didn't get it. Like, I didn't connect the two. Like, there wasn't a, like, if the two halves of my brain, like, they weren't connecting. And I just didn't know. And I thought I knew, I just didn't. Until my ego was so destroyed. Until I was so beaten. And it took 3 DUIs and a bunch of trips to jail. And my last DUI, you know, it was a Halloween night of 2015. I dressed up like an alcoholic and I got arrested. And they caught me. And then I went to court a few months later, and I went to court. I got 2 stays, right? I got 2 extensions, and the judge looks at me each time and goes, you need to go to IOP. You need to go to A. You need to get this paperwork signed. It was 9 years between DUIs. I wouldn't have went to jail. I didn't listen to the judge. I didn't do any of that. I was too busy drinking. Like, I went to jail, sentenced me to 3 years, and she said, you know, we're going to suspend everything. In Maryland, they do this thing where they suspend all of it but a month. But if you mess up in that 3-year probation, you get all the time. So my dad looks at me and goes, are you done? And I was really done. Like, I was crying on yellow in an orange jumpsuit. You just don't do that. So, man, what time is it? All right, here we go. Here's the good stuff. So I get out. He looks at me and says, all right, you're going to AA. And where I'm from, there was only like 15 meetings a week. And I'm in Baltimore now. That's why I say that. There's 850 to 900 meetings a week. It's crazy. And but so he goes, you're going to 4 meetings a week. You're going to find a sponsor. You're going to get into service. And I'm not going with you. Like, my dad did this beautiful thing where he didn't get in my way. He didn't get in my way of God. And what I didn't know is that his sponsor was going to the meetings. And like, he told his sponsor, like, I think he told his sponsor, but he didn't tell me that. Right. So I'm in there, you know, and I go to these meetings. I remember I was being like, I knew everybody in there because they all knew me because I'm Bill D's son. And but they made me feel so welcome because, you know, I knew people. You know what I did? You know who I didn't see? I bartended in this area for almost 20 years. I didn't see one person from the bar. Not one. And what's that tell you? You know, if you're new in here, it's pretty rare to be an alcoholic in an AA meeting. I bartended for 17 years in a small town. Apparently I was the only alcoholic. I might have seen one other person that I bartended for. Like, they're either not alcoholics or they're not making it here. Like, I mean, the town I lived in only had about 6,000 people. And I bartended at popular places. So, and I did it for 17 years. Like, people knew who I was. Like, the cops knew me by name. So if you're sitting in here, you know, these are special seats. You didn't make it here by accident. If you didn't, you don't have to die and go to jail and have all these crazy things happen to you. You know, we're here to be a demonstration of what our higher power can do in our life and to help other people. That's our primary purpose, is to help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. You know, I said a few prayers before I got here today. You know, please God, remove my fear and direct my attention to what you would have me be, because my whole purpose to doing this today is to be a demonstration of what God's done in my life. And it's not to be boastful or, you know, have an ego about it, you know. It's to show that these seats are sacred, because I sat behind a bar for so long in a somewhat small town. And when I first walked into an AA meeting, all I knew was the alcoholics. I expected to see a bunch of bar customers or a bunch of other people that I knew from the bar that I didn't see in a while. I didn't see one of them. And as long as I've stayed in AA, I've never seen another one. And none of them have reached out to me. And they know that I'm in AA. I've reached out to a few of them and said, hey, you know, I'm here. Not a one of them. Like, that's a pretty, because I was curious. It's like, why? I asked myself one day, why do I have this and nobody else did? Because I was positive that other people that I bartended for had alcoholism. But, you know, we're only alcoholics when we say we're alcoholics. You know, we take this to the gates of insanity or death. And I know I did. You know, I got to my bottom quicker because, you know, the universe wanted me to, because my primary purpose is to help other people, you know. But, you know, let me get back on track here. You know, I walk in there and there's this guy named Mark. He's folding origami on a Star Wars book, and he's like 33 and he's wearing this picnic table red shirt, and he doesn't even look up. And I read that passage because it's how I picked my sponsor. He wasn't, you know, I was talking to my friend Alice, or let me finish this. And he said, I didn't get sober not to have fun. And that's all he said. And my dad said, find a sponsor. I said, how do I find a sponsor? And he was like, you'll know. You'll just know. Like, and for some reason, what he said rang inside of me. Like, I'm not going to say like, and it echoed. When he said it, it echoed. That's the best way I can describe it. And so I walked up to him after the meeting and I did that super awkward thing. I was like, hi, how you doing? I'm Kevin. Will you be my sponsor? And he said, can you say it louder? And I said, will you be my sponsor? And I kind of looked away from him. I was like, I was like asking him on a date. It was super weird. And he was like, well, and he asked me a few questions. He said, are you teachable? And I said, yeah. He said, well, are you willing to go to any length? And that's a trick question. And just letting you know, like, they don't tell you what all the links are. Like in my head, it's like a shoelace. That's all it is. In my head, it's like that long. It's like that long. It's not, it's like the length of a Zoom window. And they don't tell you that it's real long. And but I said, yeah. And then he asked me this other question. He said, can you remove all the expectations from your life? And I said, what does that mean? And he said, just say yes for now. And I said, what? He said, you said that you were willing to go to any length. And I said, see, trick question. And he said, of course, I'll sponsor you. It'll be an honor. And this little guy, man, he gave me some instructions to do. He did it very old AA, man. He didn't coddle me. He said, we're not friends right now. And he said, read these pages, call me when you're done, ask me let me know if you have any questions. And I remember that I said, oh, well, he's not going to check up on me at all. And I he said, so I called him like the next day and I said, I read the doctor's opinion. And he said, you got any questions? I said, no. He said, reread it. And I said, what? And then I called him the next day and he made me reread it until I asked him like what. He said, do you know what frothy emotional appeal is? And I went, oh, you want me to ask actual questions? Like, and he gave me this roadmap. Like he helped me understand the book. Because see, when I would read it by myself, frothy would make me thirsty. Like this book didn't translate. It didn't become part of my skin. Right. So, and then more importantly, when I would see him in a meeting, he would come and get me, and then we'd go to a meeting, and then he would look at me and go, all right, here's the keys to the building. Go make coffee. And he would show me what the spiritual experience looked like. He would allow me to have the experience. And that's my role. That's my road in AA in the first 6 months. And it's been, it was service, it was recovery. And when those two got put together, the unity, you showed up, as soon as the people in AA started seeing that I was serious, the unity just took over. Like I didn't have to do much. Like you started saying hi, you started inviting me to the diner. You started saying, hey, do you want to go get coffee? Hey, we're having a cookout. Hey, do you want to come over? See, all I had to do from there was say yes. Like I didn't want to because I'm an isolator, right? I'm not an isolator. I'm so used to being isolating. Like that's the trick, right? I'm so used to being alone. But I spent so many years in the bar being around people. My disease would lie to me and be like, oh, you just want peace and quiet. No, I crave this fellowship. I'm a human being. I crave other people. I was just talking to my friend Alice, who's been sober for 40 years, right? And she says, the great thing about Zoom is it allows people to find themselves. She said, but when I got sober in this room called the Agape Room in Baltimore, and it was so packed that you couldn't help but touch people. And I needed human touch. I needed human touch to get sober. Now, in this day and age where you can't touch people, people don't have that. She said, that's not how I got sober, but that's how people are getting sober. I love how AA changes. I love that Bill Wilson quote that says that AA must and AA will and must always change. As long as it's his anonymity, it's his final statement. As long as the spiritual principles remain the same, the other things will and always change. I'm paraphrasing. That's not exactly what it says, but he's talking about anonymity. As long as the spirit of anonymity stays. It's but the way I got sober was exactly what was needed. It was tailor-made for me. Like my pain before I got here, the love that I was shown, it was like God tailor-made it for me. It's like he made the suit. Like the suit, the sobriety suit, the room I walked into was exactly what was needed. It wasn't like some big book meeting that they were telling me what I needed to do, what I had to do, what I should. Like, no, that wasn't it. It was the exact meeting and the exact group of people I needed. Now, as my sobriety as that line in the How It Works says, we're willing to grow along spiritual lines. We crave the fellow, we go after the fellowship we crave, As I grow along spiritual lines, I've made my home group a big book meeting. That's super intense, but I love the flow of the spirituality in this. Like I got sober in a place, and then I go to in that place where it was exactly what God needed me to have. And I got to help those people that needed the help that was available that I could give. And I didn't know there was a spiritual awakening in a toilet brush. Like, I was getting pissed. You don't know who I am. I'm scrubbing this toilet. And they're like, and my sponsor looks at me and goes, yeah, your guy got out of jail. Who do you think you are? It's that humble pie that they were serving. And then I come to Baltimore, and then I get to hear all this beautiful sobriety. And in Baltimore, you can't just volunteer. So more humble pie, right? They have to call on you. And I'm looking all angry and pissed off. So they're not calling on me. They don't want to hear from an angry guy. And as soon as I started cracking a smile, they started, hey, what do you got to say? And it's this beautiful flowing of Alcoholics Anonymous in my life. And so I was, I've always had a sponsor. And there was this point in my sobriety where I thought, when they say, I got this, when people that are sober about 1 or 2 years, they say, oh, I got this. Well, I did that. I didn't drink, but I was running around AA. I was secretary meetings. I was making coffee. I was doing all the service. I was feeling good, but I was going through disability. So this guy, he looks at me and says, hey, I really like the program you're working. Will you manage my sober house? And I was like, yeah, I would love to do that. So in the middle of, so I'm doing that. And how do I tell this? I don't know why. I don't know why I'm telling this story, because I usually don't. But because it's not exactly my own story to tell. All right. So I'm managing a sober house, and it was one of the greatest experiences I've ever had. It's me, and I'm 2 years sober, and 10 guys from NA. Now, if you think that your program is strong, try to manage 10 Narcotics Anonymous guys. Yeah. So I'm watching these guys, and then this person comes into my life, and her name is Jamie. And we start hanging out, and we become best friends very quickly. And the next thing I know, we're sleeping together. And Jamie's married, and she's in this abusive relationship. And we're telling each other we love each other and all this stuff. And it all seems like it's going great until we realize that she's a good person. She can't lie. So we break it off, because I'm not living honestly. I'm not the guy that breaks these spiritual principles like this. Because see, I was the guy in my drinking. See, this is what I didn't understand about alcoholism. You can't just not drink and go to meetings. Okay. You can't just not live by these spiritual principles. Like, you got to be honest. Like, I thought that as long as I didn't drink, I could just do what I wanted. I really thought that. Like, and I literally looked at my sponsor and said, oh, me and her is God's will. And he laughed. Right? And I was repeating what she said to me. And I said, what does that mean? He says, the minute you say something's God's will, it's not. He said, God's will is an afterthought. It's only a recognition of an experience. So the long and the short of this is that her and I decided to break it off. We remained friendly, but she realizes that if her sobriety depended on her being honest with her family and her relationship with them, And I also realized that I can't be the side piece anymore. Right. Because I was that guy when I was drinking. I was a bartender. I didn't cheat on girlfriends that I had, but I didn't mind being the guy you cheated with. Like, I was okay with that. Like, mind over matter. If you don't mind, it don't matter. Like, so long and the short of it is that, Jamie's dead now. Like, and it was 2 years had passed since we did anything. But like the pandemic hit, and she didn't latch on to the Zoom thing. And I don't know what happened, because we don't talk. We didn't talk. I mean, she had a year something sobriety, and I don't know what happened. But yeah, see, that's why I don't know why I'm telling the story, because it's not exactly my story to tell. But at that point in my sobriety, I wasn't living along spiritual lines. And but God stepped in, and I was living in that sober house, and I was working with those men, and I realized now that it wasn't just my life that depended on it. Because if I start running around and doing whatever I want to do, those 10 other guys that are living in that house don't get to have the relationships with me that they deserve, and their sobrieties depend on it too. So thank God that God intervened, because we did have a beautiful, beautiful experience the year and a half that I was there. And, shortly after that, I found out that I was sick. I found out that I had a bone infection. Ironically enough, I lost my hip. I had this thing called osteomyelitis. And because of that accident, 10 minutes, okay. Because of that accident, and I told you I was disabled before, because of the demonstration in my life, because of God's demonstration in my life, I have never drank through all of the pain that I go through every day, of being handicapped, and of not being able to do what other people do. That's the biggest trick, is I was sitting in the doctor's office one day, and my doctor understood what was going to happen. Like, I had no idea. Like, we're sitting in there one day, and he says, you got 3 options. You got this bone infection, and what's going to happen is that we have to get it before it gets to your brain, because the infection's attached to the metal in your body. And I had metal in my wrist. I had a bunch of metal in my wrist, and 9 screws in my pelvis, and a titanium hip. And he said, we have to get it out. He said, you got 2 options. We can cut your leg off. We can take the metal out, or we can just give you a bunch of antibiotics and hope for the best. I said, well, we'll just take the metal out. He said, well, that's going to leave you with no hip, because you got screws in your pelvis. They've been there for 17 years. I said, well, let's just do it. And it was an instant decision. It's that step 11 thing where you intuitively know how to handle situations that used to baffle you. Like, I just said, yes, let's go. And it's the second best decision I ever made. It really is. Because, see, I'm attached to my leg. I kind of want to keep it. I've had it my whole life. Like, that wasn't on the table, right? But I didn't want to risk keeping all of this in my body and dying again. Because, see, I really like this guy here. I really like sober Kevin. I do. I like the soul that's been awakened. I like the God inside of me, because deep inside every human being is the fundamental idea of God. I love this person. All those times I thought about committing suicide before, I'd have killed the wrong person. I definitely would have. And so today I walk around with 1 hip in my body. And still today, I've been in prison. I've been in jails. The greatest prison I ever have is the one in my own mind. It's a beautiful life that I live today, because I get to put you in front of me. And that's where I find love. this program of love and tolerance for others. Some people get hung up on that tolerance thing. But when I have love, tolerance is easy. If it wasn't for Alcoholics Anonymous and all the ups and downs of life, there's no way I could get through what I'm going through now. If I would have, if that day in jail, my dad wouldn't have offered Alcoholics Anonymous up to me, if he wouldn't have gotten sober when I was 12 years old, or whenever he was going to get sober, there was no way I would have I'd be alive today, because I don't know if there's destiny or fate. All I know is that if I was supposed to get sick like this, if I was drinking, I wouldn't have made it, because I'd have never found it. I'd have never went to the hospital that day and found the bone infection. And AA always shows up. It always shows up. The hardest thing about not having a hip is and my doctor keeps asking me to go see a therapist, but I keep telling him that I'm in AA. And he doesn't understand that we got the greatest fellowship of armchair psychologists in the world. Like, the hardest thing about it is seeing people walk, is like upstairs. Like, you guys can walk anywhere you want, but it's like when I see like a kid take off running, it's like, damn. Or like I'm gonna walk again. Like, I can walk sort of right now. Like, I can get up and I can walk into the bathroom. It's a few feet. But like, I have a few like goals. Like, I didn't know that we were allowed to set goals. As crazy as that sounds. I want to be able to carry my own cup into a kitchen, or my own dinner plate from the kitchen to the dining room. I want to be able to carry my own big book into a meeting. Just simple stuff. It's just stuff I can't do right now. I would love not to have to carry a backpack like a student everywhere, or a fanny pack, even though fanny packs ain't bad. But it's just like, I would love to be able to wear a pair of pants that don't fall off on one side, because I only have half an ass. Like, these are things you don't realize. Like, because the belt doesn't pull tight anymore, because there's no bone to stop it. It's like the weirdest thing. Like, I wake up sometimes and I got one leg like right here, and I got another leg like way over here, like 90 degrees. Like, like, I can pick my leg up right now and touch my ear. It's the craziest thing. Like, I can do tricks. I should be in the circus. But like, if we can't laugh about it, we can't live with it in here. And Alcoholics Anonymous is the greatest, thank you, Glenn, is the greatest gift I've ever gotten in my life. What it seemed at first a flimsy reed turns out to be the ever-loving hand of God. And I read this quote today, and it said, "Faith is not a stagnant pool. It is rather a fountain that rises from the influx of personal experience. Personal faith flows out of experience and a pledge." And March just started, and I remember when I took that third step, and I really started to have faith in God, a God of my understanding, and that constant, every day. I woke up this morning and I said a bunch of prayers. And I said the third step prayer. I said the 7-step prayer. I said St. Francis. I said stop the Thomas Merton prayer. I read 84 to 88. And I woke up and I looked outside and I said, "Good morning, beautiful." That's what I call God. And I call him beautiful. I call him Gus. Whatever. Life today is such a beautiful experience. The words of my first sponsor still ring in my head. You know, stop looking for God. God's not lost. You are. Just take in this beautiful experience. And, you know, I love the magic of the mystery in here. And that when I find it and when it finds me, I sit in awe and I go, wow, that's it. That's it. I love sponsoring men. I love laughing in here. I've never laughed harder than in an AA room. Thank you, Glenn, for asking me to share.